A place to be, to groom your words, a place that is secured for the rest of mine. No other place but burial schools is the best.
Hello and welcome to Burial International School. Welcome to our online videos, our online lessons, and today I'll be introducing you to a basic science class reserved for Jss1 and 3 students. Today we're going to continue from where we stopped in space travel. Last time we talked much about space traveling and we did define what space travel is. Okay, so today we are going to continue from the unique material or the unique dress code being used by astronauts during this space traveling. Of course, we did define space traveling to be movement in space, if you remember, and we said you can't just move in the space with your usual clothes, with your clothing, the usual clothes you wear in your day-to-day activities. So there is a specific or a designed attire that you need to use or to wear when going on a space travel. So that is known as what? The space suit. Then I told you earlier that it is either called a space suit or a space jacket. Please do not misplace these words, as though we have what? The space suit, we have the space jacket, we have the spaceship and the spacecraft. Now the spaceship and the spacecraft are gadgets or machines or equipment that transport you, that can take you to the space. Just like your vehicles here, you can take your vehicle, or your vehicle is a means of transportation that takes you from one place to the other. So the spaceship, anytime you hear the term spaceship or spacecraft, just take note that that's a transporter, that's their means of transportation. It's a machine that helps them, or a special craft that helps them to travel to the space. So today we're going to be talking about the space suit, also known as the space jacket. So the space suit is a special suit or jacket used by astronauts to cover their whole body. Now, why is it so? One would wonder, why do they need a special suit or a special jacket to cover the whole of their body? Yes, it's for protection. That's because outside the Earth, in the space, you'll be encountering so many other gases or a different environment, a different atmosphere, or should we rather say an atmospheric condition that may not be suitable for you. Like we know in other planets, it's difficult for you to breathe in there because you can't find oxygen on most of the planets. So it's difficult for plants or animals to survive there. So when an astronaut travels to that place for the purpose of research or any other activity, he needs a special jacket or a special suit that will enable him to stay for any designed period of time there successfully or freely. Okay, so when astronauts leave their spacecraft, this means they must have left the planet Earth and traveled to the space. So when they leave their spacecraft or spaceships, they wear space suits, which allows them to maintain the Earth atmospheric pressure. Now, what does this mean? That while on Earth there is an atmospheric pressure that a human being, that an animal or a plant maintains, which is quite different from the atmospheric pressure you encounter out there on the space. So let's continue. Of the Earth pressure around their body throughout their stay in space. So this space suit is worn throughout their stay in the space. Now they may not wear this space suit while they are inside their spacecraft or spaceship, because even the spaceship has been designed to maintain the same Earth atmospheric pressure. But when leaving the spaceship or the spacecraft, they have to now put on that special attire, which we call the space suit. Now, it also has a supply of air and allows them to survive and move around the space. We still talk about the spaceship, the space suits. Now, there is something you need to know about the spacesuit. That the spacesuit has 4 different layers whose functions are: 1, the first layer, which is next to the skin. Just like when you dress, like now my shirt, I could consider this shirt to be the first layer. Why? Because it is next to my skin. Now, at times you see that when you see astronauts in space carrying out their experiment or their activity, most times you see them with swollen clothes. They wear clothes as if the clothes are, at times you feel like they are swollen. But that's the space jacket, or that's the space suit. That is, at times you might think, oh, because they're in space, they have become fat. No, that is the space suit, because it's as if you're wearing a shirt on top of another shirt on top of another shirt. So the space suit has 4 layers. So if for you to understand better, what I mean is like you're putting on 4 different shirts at a time. So does the space suit also have what? 4 different layers. So the first layer here we say is next to the skin, and it contains water, which cools the body. Now this first layer contains what? Water, just distilled water that cools the body. It helps to also regulate the temperature of the body. The second layer contains air, which protects the astronauts from extreme heat and cold in outer space. Now this is it. You know, even here on Earth, there are times, I'm talking about the function of air now, to the space suit. Okay, let's say for instance, you're in a particular room and the room becomes hot. What do? You need an air conditioner, right? You need an air conditioning system that will either regulate the temperature to become high or low, for your understanding, to make it either low, as to make the temperature either cold or hot. So the second layer here contains air. The second layer of the spacesuit contains air, which protects the astronaut from extreme heat or cold. So in a case where the astronaut gets to an outer space that has so much heat in that topography, what happens? He activates the cold air inside the spacesuit to help regulate his temperature, to help protect him. And if he also encounters a very cold place, he also does what? And he also activates the heat to help him to cope with that environment. The third layer contains air, like the second layer. This has the same pressure as the atmospheric pressure of the Earth. Now that one now is, we can say it's the oxygen, the one he now breathes in, the one he now takes in. At times you see them with something like a windpipe, connected to somewhere, a cylinder behind, that assists them or that enables them to do what? To take in oxygen. Don't forget that environment or the outer space may not be conducive or may not be friendly. What do I mean by it being friendly? The air, you may not find oxygen there to breathe in. And you know what happens if you don't get oxygen, you suffocate. Okay. Now the fourth layer, that's the last layer, is added to protect the other layers. Now the fourth layer is just added there to protect the other layers of that space suit. But in the fourth layer, that's where you now find the face shield. Find the face shield there, or the glasses that they do use. You find it's just like in waterproof form, in nylon form. You see the fourth layer there. It's just there to protect the other layers from encountering danger in terms of heat, so it doesn't melt the other layers. So the fourth layer there serves as protection, it serves as a shield against any atmospheric pressure that they may encounter. When I say they may, I'm referring to the astronauts. Okay, after looking at the space suit now, let us really consider the purpose for which this astronaut do travel. So now let's look at the purpose and benefits of space travel. You can also say space traveling. The purpose or benefits of space travel. Now the following are some of the reasons space travel is embarked on. Number 1, for research purposes. You agree with me that just as we are learning today, if astronauts, or if a group of scientists did not come out to travel to the space to get some sort of discoveries about the space itself, then I won't be here teaching you. Because between you and I have not traveled out to space. But how can I teach you this now today? That's because of what research. Now scientists or astronauts have been able to travel out to the space for research purposes. They have traveled out to discover other planets. They've traveled out to discover the outer space. They have learned so much about it and have written about it, where today you and I can now carry out the research and know more about the world, the whole universe. That is why we know the number of planets that we do have. We know in fact we can now discuss the solar system. It's because of what? The research purpose, or for them to research. They were able to research, travel through the space to get research on that. Now the second purpose or benefit of space travel is to study the outer planet. To study the outer planet. Now there are most times scientists or astronauts, let me just use the term scientists, they do warn us about some dangers, some atmospheric dangers. At times you see something like eclipse, on other natural disasters, or even weather conditions, where, sometimes when you listen to the radio, they will tell you, or when you listen to this, they will tell you, in today's weather forecast, there will be showers of rain in this humidity, in this pressure. It is until they carry out this study about the outer planet, that is when they can warn us or teach us more about these things. Okay, the third reason here is to look for an alternative to life in other planets. Now there is a strong research on alternative planets that could inhabit man outside the planet Earth. There are researches. You can go ahead and Google it. Researchers or astronauts or scientists are researching day in, day out, looking for an alternative planet. Assuming tomorrow Earth becomes a disaster, or Earth can no more inhabit us, or the Earth is so full, what's the alternative? That is one of the reasons. The fourth reason here is to help mount some intelligent electronic gadgets. Some intelligent electronic gadgets like the satellites. Now, the purpose or one of the benefits of space travel is that it enables scientists to travel to the space in order to do what? To mount some security gadget or some gadget, electronic gadget, like what? You have the satellite, and we also have other things like the cloud, where at most times you save some of your files or your data in the Sky Drive. One example is Facebook, your Google and other Google Drive, Linkr, and etc. And most times we even use secret cameras, like in the Western world. Some secret cameras can be installed in the outer space that will view the Earth, or that will view a particular certain region of the country or state, where if anything goes on in that place, it will be captured. Now this is one of the reasons I said here, to help mount some intelligent electronic gadgets. Example, we have satellites. We have other examples of these things that are being mounted in the outer space. The fifth reason is to maintain or maintenance and repairs of these satellites. Maintenance and repairs of these satellites or other security gadgets that may have been installed up there. We also have the sixth reason here, that it allows people to collect samples from the moon. I would love to hear that they collect samples from the sun. I know that's going to make you laugh. It enables them to collect samples from the moon for other forms of study or experiment. Yes, they collect samples from the moon, the stars, and other earthly bodies for more research or experiment, to study more about it, to see how we can perhaps do away with eclipse of the moon or eclipse of the sun. I believe by now you understand what causes the eclipse of the sun or eclipse of the moon. Okay, so that is one of the purposes or one of the reasons. Now, number 7, it is a form of recreation, tourism, or exploration. Of course, most in the Western world, most people just travel to the space just for tourism, just to tour. just to see how the outer world looks like. Just to see, okay, I'm tired of the earth. Just want to go out. Let me just see how it looks like. You just find your spaceship, get your space jacket, get all the necessary items you need with professionals, of course, who are going to lead you. You just take a tour outside the planet. Yes, most times you say exploration. That is when you now want to see what the components that are made up of other planets and what other planets can inhabit as well. Like someone mentioned in a previous class, someone mentioned that we have giants. There's a planet that contains giants, giant trees and giant beings. I'm yet to find that out, okay? Okay, we also have the 8th reason here, that it helps us to learn more about the nature of the universe, which may potentially lead to a discovery of life beyond the boundaries of Earth. Of course, you know what nature is all about. Yes, like there is a planet, not yet confirmed, but I think Pluto, where they say that there are herbs, plants grow in that particular region, so in that particular planet, and that this particular plant can cure all sorts of diseases, infection of viruses, though we are yet to confirm that. But I'm just giving you an example. So it is, and that is nature, of course, you know. So it is until, that's one of the purpose or benefits, it's until when you explore other planets, or when you explore the space, the outer space, that's when you'll be able to get some of these alternatives to life that will help us in our day-to-day activities. Okay, number 9 here is that it has contributed a great deal to space knowledge. It has contributed, of course, a great deal to space knowledge. The 10th reason here is that man space travel has included a lot of first in space. What do we mean by this? The first animal in space, the first man in space, the first woman in space, the first man on moon, the first man to discover this, the first man to do this in that, the first man that mounted a satellite in the space, or the first country, or the first group of persons that discovered that, oh, you can actually travel to the space. And there's the first space tourists as well. So this is going to be part of your assignment, of course, at the end of the class. But you're going to tell me the first animal discovered in space, the first man on moon, the first man or group of persons in as it will apply to mount the satellite or to discover that it could actually function or work there in space, the first tourist, etc. You're going to tell me that in our assignment. So now let's look at the dangers of space travel. Just like we know, since we've looked at the benefits or the purposes of space travel, which we stated or which we mentioned, and it includes research purposes, to find alternatives to lives, to get to discover more, to explore for tourism, etc. And we know, but you will agree with me, that everything that has an advantage must also have what? A disadvantage. So let us now look at the dangers of space traveling. Perhaps the reason why your father or your guardian may not take you to the space, because I understand that as of now you'll be wondering, Daddy, if the space is this, if it's a tourist center, if it's a place where we could go for tourism or exploration, why don't you take me there? And you say, okay, why would our state government not take certain people there per annum? Now let me expose you to that danger why you may not be going there as a body or as an individual, except if you want to become an astronaut or scientist tomorrow. Now this is the dangers of what? Space travel. Now venturing into space travel is not without risk. In space, the disorienting feeling of weightlessness is more. Now, we talked about zero gravity in our previous classes, or that's when we're talking about gravitation and weightlessness. that gravitation or that has to do with what? Attraction, where objects are moved or attracted to each other. And weightlessness, we say that here on Earth, the law of gravity says that what? That every object or every body with mass is being what? Drawn to the center of the Earth, which means what? No matter how little a piece of paper is, it has mass, therefore it must attract, or it must come down. Is that correct? And we also say that weightlessness is not completely being weightless. Yeah, weightlessness is just what? The feeling when you're on a free fall. But in space, that is where you really feel weightlessness. And that is what? Also a danger. Have you ever seen pictures or videos of astronauts in space before? Some you see as if they are on air, they're suspended in the air, you know. How would you feel when if you're suspended in the air? Come on, it will make you feel mad, is it not so? That feeling itself is the first danger. Let's go further. Now, this is correctly termed microgravity. That is, weightlessness is correctly termed what? Microgravity. Now, I've underlined this because I really need you to understand what microgravity is all about. Now, microgravity is an environment or condition in which there is very little net gravitation force, or there is very little net of what? Gravitational force. Now, let's look at what microgravity can cause. Let's look at what microgravity can cause, or what that weightlessness can cause, that can later pose as a danger or threat to space travel. Now, microgravity can cause what? Number one, mental disorientation or space motion sickness. Mental disorientation or space motion sickness. Now, let me use the second one, space motion sickness. This means when you are moving in space. Come on, that's okay. Okay, let's just say here on Earth, I allow you to fly in a plane, an airplane, or an aircraft, and then you have the opportunity of sitting by the window, by the side of the aircraft. I'm talking about your plane, the one you use in flying, transporting from this place to the other. Beautiful. Now you're allowed to look. If you're allowed to look through the window, at times what happens? You get scared. It's not so. The emotion. You get what? Some people will do what? They vomit. Most people do what? They vomit. Others get very scared and they just want to concentrate. They just want to either read a book or a novel. They just want to get a gadget or something else just to use to keep them busy. Most persons can never look through the window. They can never look through the window of an aircraft, talk less of an helicopter. Okay, let's also talk about this. When you see most military men, like the Air Force officers, you see they hang on a line, and then the helicopter is flying there on the air. We talk about that feeling. That feeling, how does it make you feel? It will cause you what? Motion sickness. So if you're in the space and you find yourself floating and you're able to move, it could cause what? Space motion sickness, otherwise known as what? Mental disorientation. Why is it mental disorientation? Because your mentality has been set, has been figured, or has been programmed to understand that you need to do what? To work. You need to work to get to move from one place to the other. That's locomotion. That has been your mentality. But now you're going to have this mental disorientation. Why? Because you can no longer move the way you used to move. You have a certain way you have to move. So it could cause you this. That's the first thing. Second, here we have a change in the circulation of fluid in the body, in the whole body. A change in the circulation of fluid in the whole body. Now, imagine when perhaps because you've been disoriented, you're supposed to move this way, but you find yourself upside down because of zero gravity. You find yourself turning upside down. Of course, you could have this as well. You could have a change in the circulation of fluid in your body. We're talking about blood. in the body. Now, whose resultant effect leads to the following. Now, if you have this change in the circulation of fluid in the body, the resultant effect leads to the following. One, you could have a puffy head, bird leg syndrome. This is what you could also have. That's the first one. Now let us explain this. Puff head, bird leg syndrome. Puff head, bird leg syndrome. Now, it is a condition where sinuses swell and blood shifts to the legs. Your sinuses swells and the blood also shifts to the leg. I know what happens when the circulation is not done properly, when you don't have the proper inflow of oxygen and blood through the pipes, the windpipes. You want me to use vein? Okay, maybe we'll get to, when you get to SS1, you get to know more about biology. Then we'll be talking about the veins, where you have the SPV, the superior vena cava, the arteries, the pulmonary arteries, and all of that. But for now, let us use the terms that you understand better. So I'm talking about what? Puffy head and bird leg syndrome. That it's a condition where you get what your sinuses swell and blood shifts to the leg. The second resultant effect that this may cause you is what? You could have what we call osteoporosis. Osteoporosis is what? A decrease in bone mass. Where you feel like the bone mass in your leg or the bone mass in your hand is not there. You can't feel the mass. You know what mass is? Okay. Now this is what, due to the changes in force and stress that causes bone forming cells to do what? To become less active because of the environment you now find yourself. Okay, let's move further. The bones become what? Brittle, thin, and weak. Victims are susceptible. They are susceptible to a fracture. Now, if you have this issue, if you have this challenge, what happens? You could have a fracture. That bone could have a fracture. You know what a fracture is? That's when you say, I've broken my hand. Your hand has shifted. It's a fracture. It's a bone fracture. The bone leaves the original position or the original state, either by virtue of breaking or shifting or movement where it's not supposed to be. It's a fracture. It's represented as a fracture. So the third one is what? Damaged cells. Example, the kidney forms painful kidney stones due to the low calcium concentration in the blood. So when you have low calcium concentration in the blood, it causes the kidney to give a painful kidney stone. And this could also pose as a threat or a danger to the astronaut or to the space traveler. Now the third reason here, don't forget we're explaining this. We're explaining the resultant effects of this. That's why we have the diagram figure 1, 2, and 3. So the third reason here, or the third causes of microgravity here is what? Temporary or permanent hearing problems. You could have a temporary or permanent hearing loss due to long-term exposure to loud noise from the space equipment or the space stations. Now, the space station here is a place where astronauts or scientists who intend to travel to the space live in, just like an environment, just like a house. That's what we refer to as what is the space station. So, an astronaut or a scientist who intends or who usually travel to the space could have a challenge of deafness, temporary deafness or permanent deafness. Why is this so? Because of the space equipment. Let's begin with the rocket. For example, that's like a spaceship. The rocket. When the rocket is about to move, do you know what happens? The sound, the noise, the spaceship itself that takes the man to the space is very, very noisy. So the noise that comes from it by itself can cause what? A temporary deafness or hearing problem or a permanent hearing problem. So of course, you know, one of the ways you could prevent this is by using what? The headset or other gadget that could prevent you from hearing those loud noises that could affect the drums of your ear. Let's go over to the fourth one here. We have what we call emission of some deadly radiation and dangerous gases. Now, when you're exposed to some of these dangerous gases or radiations, it could also pose a threat to you as an individual, or you as a scientist, or you as the astronaut. We also have psychological danger. Imagine when there are times most of you just watch just movies. Now we're talking about the psychology, the mind, we're talking about your mind. Now there are times you just watch just a movie, and the things you see, you can't just comprehend, you can't just watch it anymore. What happens? At times you close your eyes, at times you just remove your face from the television screen, and you ask, have I finished that part? You say yes, and you will not continue watching. How much more if you now travel to the space for new discoveries, and you see things you've not seen before? Okay, let's go to the other one. Collision with space debris, that's matter. At times when you're just free on the free flow, and you're having some collision with the space matter, like in the space you have other things that you know matter, and as you're just going on the free flow, you see yourself having some collision. You know, even if you have the space suit and the helmet that protects you, it could also pose as a threat or a danger or a disadvantage to space travelers. Okay, that brings us to the end of our class for today. And before I leave you or if I let you go, I would love you to do this assignment for me. I would love you to give names or group of persons. Don't forget, please take note. Give names or group of persons. This group may either entail a country, a group of persons or people, a country, a region, etc. To the following. So tell me the names of people or the country or group of persons, etc. that have done this.